Hi everyone, and welcome to this evening's ECF Academy session. We are going to be focusing on the World Championship match. So hopefully everyone's been following it, and it's been very, very exciting. I'm sure you'll agree. Let me just share my screen with you and just let a couple more people in. And I'm really happy to hear your thoughts on the match. If you can share them with me, that'd be fantastic. Just letting Adam into the meeting. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I'll let you know what I think of the match so far. So at this point in the match, we're on the 9th, is the date today, because this is going on YouTube. The date today is the 9th of the 12th. So at this point, Nepo has lost 3 games. Now, having lost 3 games is very unusual for Nepo, and something has gone wrong. And I think the main thing that's gone wrong for him is a psychological thing. Now, I'm not sure if you guys know, and I hope you know, but he's made 2 massive blunders. So in the game, let me just get these up. We're going to be having a look at game 8 today, but in game 8, he blundered a pawn, which is a massive deal. If you're 2800 level and you blunder a pawn, it's virtually unheard of. And then in the next game, he blundered a whole piece. So that's not his chess ability. We all know his chess ability is fantastic. That's obviously something to do with nerves. So any of you ever felt nervous before a game and made silly blunders that you just thought, how can I ever make that blunder? I'd be happy to hear about them, because psychology plays a massive role in chess, and even more so than people might think. Judith Polgar was talking about it. I was watching the live stream, and it's a bit weird. Like, you make a blunder in chess that basically makes you look like a beginner. And it's not because you're a beginner, it's because you've got something else going on in your mind that's distracting you. So those that are very, very good at chess, i.e. Magnus Carlsen, have a real advantage in the psychological aspect. And he can lose a game, a really bad game of chess, and then the next game he can come back and win. So what I wanted to have a look at today was game number 8. I thought it'd be good to look at a game that was decisive, and we can think about why we thought this game was decisive. So if you've seen it before, that's absolutely great, and I'm really pleased you've been following. There's so much to every single game that you've probably learned something that you've not seen before. So let's get started. This is game number 8 in Carlsen versus Napo. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the second name. Okay, so the game started with e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6. So you can tell me in the chat, what opening is this? Does anyone play it? Thank you, Gregory, Charlie, Michelle, Emma. Yeah, the Petrov defense. So I'm sure when you're a beginner, you learnt the trap. Knight takes, queen e2, knight moves out of the way, and then you win your opponent's queen. And that's usually people's first experience of the Petrov defense. And then they realize that it's actually a good opening. And you may know that Caruana played it in the previous World Championship match. And it's a really strong weapon of Caruana's. So in this game, after d4, knight takes e4 happened. This has been seen many, many times before. At this level of chess, it's really hard to / impossible to do something that hasn't been seen before. That's a good quality line. So, you know, a lot of it is in the prep, but it's very hard to find something. Oh, Charlie says he plays the d4 line. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that with us, Charlie Hill. So black went d5, knight takes e5, knight d7, knight takes d7 was played. Now, the move that's been quite popular in recent years is knight c3. I quite like this line myself. It basically, this bishop starts to look quite good. So yeah, this is knight c3, knight takes e5, one takes, and then you're left with a strong bishop, and black doesn't have a knight on f6 to defend h7. And it's a bit unclear, but that's been popular in recent years. But in this game, white took on d7, bishop takes, knight d2. No, I hadn't seen this idea before in this particular position. And when I was watching the game live, Alex and I switched the commentary over to Caruana, thinking he'd be talking about it. We didn't get too much from him either here. So knight d2. I don't think it's ever been played before by a 2500 plus player, which implies there's probably something wrong with it. But if you guys know Magnus Carlsen, he's always trying to find moves that distract their opponent from their prep, and then he can just play a good game of chess. So this happened. Bishop takes, bishop d6. And I think already White's feeling quite comfortable. Maybe Jan should have gone queen e7. Now this was a very important position, so I'm going to flip the board around. Let's be Jan for a moment, and let's have a look at this position. It's black to play. Let me know your thoughts on this position. Maybe some candidate moves for black. What's going on here? I think what Jan did here was quite clever. So black to play. I'll do the candidate moves. We've got a5 from Charlie. Kind of think he meant h5, but you can tell me if that's what you meant. Queen h4. We've got h5 from Gregory. Yeah, you can do it to everyone. You don't have to just do it privately. a5 as well. Any other candidate moves here? Oh, welcome Abdullah. He's new to the academy. We've got h5, well done. I've got queen c6 from Raya. I assume you mean queen f6. c5 from Arian. It's not a good move, but I'm surprised nobody's saying castles, because I think that's something you should consider in this position. In case but not castles because of queen h5. Okay, we'll look at that in a moment. Yeah, I bet it's definitely sort of a candidate move that you should consider and then eliminate. Okay, good. We've got a really good variety there. So we'll go through what happened in the game in a moment. But here, if black were to castle, as Katie correctly said, queen h5 is really quite annoying. Because black's only way of defending against the mate is really f5. And once you play f5, you're creating all sorts of weaknesses. And white's got an invitation to just play bishop g5. And here, I wouldn't be happy with black's position. So if I was a 2800 player playing against Magnus Carlsen, I'm sure you'd be really unhappy with your position. So basically he realized he couldn't do that, which is obviously the next move to complete his development. And we'll look at what he did in a moment. Bishop e6 here kind of defends these important squares, but then it still does run into some problems, maybe. Say rook fe1, for example. You probably have to start running with your king to break the pin. And it's okay, but I'd still feel like white was better. So Jan had to make a big decision here. And he came up with h5. So well done if you suggested h5. What's nice about that move is it prevents queen h5. And black can actually do something that black does in lots of openings, where he just tucks the king on f8, where it's actually perfectly safe. And then this h5 move might be very powerful if black were to attack the white king. So after this move, I think Jan was quite pleased with it, and he thought it was going to be fine to get a draw. Now, remember, at this point in the match, Jan is 1 point behind. He's just lost games. Well, game 6 was the first game that he lost, and that was a marathon game. It lasted ages. And so he's probably quite tired. And then game 7 was a draw, and this is game 8. But with black, I know he's a point behind at this stage of the match. He's got to be happy with a draw. So he's just trying to draw. But if an opportunity to win comes up, then of course he'll take it. And that's probably why h5 is very, very good. So c4 was played. And now, sorry, I'm just looking at a variation. It wasn't played here. Hang on a second. So we went to this position. I thought to go queen e1. And I think Magnus had a long think before playing queen e1. Maybe he wanted to play something sharper like c4, but wasn't sure about it. So now black to play. After queen e1, what do you think black played? Or if you can't remember, what's a sensible move? Yeah, good. So king f8. And as mentioned before, this is actually very common to put the king on f8. It can't be attacked. It's well defended. And, you know, with white, it's not that easy to find a plan. And it also means this rook can be powerful on the h file. You can go queen e7. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But maybe Jan was thinking at this point, I want to try and generate potentially a chance to go for the win. So queen e7 would probably be just a draw. By playing king f8, he's basically saying to Magnus, well, if the opportunity arises, I might be able to win this game because I've got these two powerful bishops. I've got the h pawn and the rook. Might be able to come out into the game as well. That's definitely not better. I'm not saying that, but it's just giving him some chances. So white went bishop b4, which I think is sensible, getting rid of the dark square bishops. Queen e7 was now played. Excuse me. Bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, queen d2, rook e8, rook a e1. So in this position here, the engine evaluation is 0.0.0, absolutely equal. Black can be pleased with getting equality at this point, but he needs to come up with a plan. So any suggestions for what black played here after rook e1? h6. I didn't know pawns go backwards. Rook h6. Yeah, good. Any other candidate moves here? Rook takes e1. Okay, good. Rook h6 was what was played in the game. It's a nice move, just bringing the rook round. Maybe he wants to attack, but he's not really going to get much of a chance to do that. He might even be able to double on the e file. White is still better here, but you've got to do something. You can't just sit back and let white do everything that white wants to do. So rook h6 was played, and then queen g5. And in this position, black to play. Any sensible suggestions? I'll just go back a second because Charlie said he likes h4 in that position. You're very aggressive as a player, Charlie. No, I don't think there's anything wrong with h4. He's trying to get closer to the white king. Yep, nothing wrong with that at all. So yeah, good suggestion. So let's just go on with what was played in the game. So black to play here. Any suggestions of a move? I think there's a few candidate moves here. Just be careful not to blunder. Yep, Charlie, c6. Anything else? f6. I don't like that. Any other candidate moves? I think there's one other move that should be considered in this position, which I'd certainly consider if I was black. B6 from Charlie Hill. Yeah, I think that's a move, definitely. Rook H, E6 from Anna. And doesn't that just lose the H pawn, though? That's the only problem, because that rook is defending that pawn. Yeah, that's the move I like. Well done, Jane. Queen B4. I don't know if it's any good. Haven't checked it with an engine, but it's one of those where I always say you should look at checks, captures, and threats. So why not look at a move that threatens the rook and the pawn, or the pawns are plural. I mean, I'm not saying it's a great move, but it's something you should consider. And what can white play? I don't know. Yeah, maybe take here. Charlie's suggestion, and then take on D5. Okay, let me just think about this. So, yeah, I definitely take about with the bishop, and then queen takes D5. I mean, if I take here now, I mean, white's probably slightly better because the queen's much better placed. But in terms of the pawn structure, who's better with the pawn structure in this position? You just like to take everything, Charlie. He wants to go queen c5 and then take on c7. Maybe, but I think that might be a bit ambitious. We'll have a look at that in a moment. Yeah, thanks, Arian. Yeah, I think if you took all the pieces off in this position, white's pawn structure is worse than black's, because black's got 2 pawn islands and white's got 3. Yan's slightly better. I don't think Yan would be. I think white probably is. Let me put the engine on for a moment. What does the engine? The engine says 0.7 for white in this position. Let's check. So you'll move Charlie. If you do that, then rook d6. I don't think you've got time to take this. Black can take on d4 or play queen b6. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's worth doing. But yeah, anyway, so that's an interesting move to consider. It's not amazing or anything, but you should definitely consider it because it does create a threat. Okay, good. So in the game, c6 was played. I think this is a sensible way to play chess, because at the moment he's playing very well, very sensibly. The pawns are in a nice pawn chain, and I think he's calculated rook takes e8, which is what happened next. And I think at this point he was probably thinking he'd be happy with a draw. So queen f6, queen e3. And yeah, I was watching the commentary live on this, and there's some interesting things going on. If queen g3 here, which I think the engine preferred according to Giri, queen d6, rook e5, h4, queen g5, and apparently this position is better for white, but it looks very weird and it looks very engine-esque, because I'd be thinking, first thing I'd be thinking is, can I not just play f6? But I suppose queen f4 feels a little bit funny, but that's what Giri was saying in the game. So queen e3, bishop went to d7, h3. Okay, yeah, I'll go back, Marcos, no problem. What position do you want me to go back to? Oh yeah, f6. Okay, so we were just looking at the line that Giri was talking about on the stream. f6, yeah, go on then, Marcus. In this position, so I guess white's got to go queen f4, otherwise. Queen f5. Oh, you want to go here, don't you? You want to win my queen. Oh, sneaky. So I guess I have to move my queen back to b8. Oh, well, Charlie's moved king f7. That's okay as well. Yeah, no, that's a clever move, Marcos, because you should always be trying to set traps for your opponent. I'm not really sure that these players would fall for that, although who knows? Who knows? Okay, that's good. Good point you made there. Okay, let's go back to the game. There's queen e3. h3 was played, very sensible. And then he went h4. So far, I think Nepo's playing very well. With black to get this position is good. Magnus went for it with c4, just trying to change the structure around slightly. And now we come to part of the game where things changed. So nothing wrong with taking, which is what happened. And now, in fact, I'm still looking at it from Jan's perspective. So here in this position, Jan played b5. Privately message me, please. White to play. What should white play here? Privately message. Don't do it to everyone if you can. I don't just want one move. I want a variation. Full variation, please. A few correct answers coming through. I'll just give you a little bit more time. So well done if you got the correct answer. Probably got it from seeing the game. If not, you've got it now, which is great. So, I mean, queen a3 check. And then the king moves. And now you can take on a7 and it hits the bishop. So literally white's just won a pawn. b5 was an absolutely terrible blunder. And, you know, this level of chess, there's no getting back from that. Now, I wasn't listening to the press conference for this game, but I'm guessing he thought maybe he could take on h3. And he must have missed something there. But the game was very, very easy for Magnus to win after that point. Now, I will go over the rest of the game in a moment very quickly, but just going back to what we were saying earlier. So why did Napo blunder like that? You know, this is a really, really high-class player. To play b5 is a terrible blunder, and I think, you know, you guys may have seen this before, but I don't think you'd find that difficult to see queen a3 in your game, even if you didn't know the move was there. So it must have been the nerves that got to him. He played a really nice game up until that point, and he was trying to keep chances to win, and then it all went wrong for him with this terrible blunder. Hang on a second, don't draw on my screen, please. Okay, so yeah, let's think about what he should have done instead. I think Katie's already done this, which is brilliant. So it's important to you guys, when you play a game of chess and you make a mistake or you lose a game, then try and work out what you can do differently next time. So what can you do differently next time? What should black play here? Let's have some candidate moves for black. You've got to be a little bit careful because white's doubled on the E file. Okay, so I've got a suggestion of king to g8. Any other candidate moves for black? Rook to g6. Let's do that in a different color. a6. b6 as well. Okay, that will do. I've got 4 candidate moves there. So let's go through them. Rook g6, I think it's a very bad move because white can go queen a3 and got to move here. And I'm thinking maybe rook e7 is best here for white. Pressure on f7 and attacking the bishop. I guess it forces bishop e6. But yeah, this isn't good at all. So I don't like that move. I know what you're trying to do though. You're trying to get at white's king. a6 I think is a good move. It's very sensible. It stops any queen a3 move which forks the pawn when it's on a7. b6 again is a bad move for the same reasons we discussed. Queen a3 and then also maybe rook e7. But king g8 also I think is a very good move. Sensible move, and there's no way Magnus can claim an advantage here. Yeah, he might want to go queen e7, but after maybe take the queen, but maybe bishop e6 would be good as well because everything's covered and there's no way white can get an advantage from what I've seen, because if you take here, you just lose a bishop. So when you play your games, you should go back to the points where you think you went wrong and try and find an improvement before you put an engine on. And in that position, if you were Jan, you should be looking at moves like king g8 and a6. Okay, so he's blundered and he's obviously feeling awful. Let's see how Magnus managed to win. I mean, the queen's come back. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, he probably knows now it's going to be over very soon. So bishop went to b3. And now black played rook d6. Let's look at this from white's perspective. It's just complete domination. Bishop's really powerful. Queen's really well placed. The rook's well placed. And potential to get a passed pawn as well. So he went rook e4, attacking this pawn, which is at the moment defended, but it's going to be a bit annoying for that queen to be tied down to h4. Bishop e6 was played. And now what would you play if you were white in this position? White to play. Again, don't just give me one move, give me more than one move, please. Any suggestions what white should play in this position? Okay, we've got lots of votes for bishop takes e6. That makes a lot of sense. If you're ahead on material, you should swap pieces off. So bishop takes e6 is correct. Well done if you got that. Rook takes, and then once again just swap the rooks off. We're now in a queen endgame. White's got an extra pawn, but what's white's other asset in this position? Tell me what else is good for white. So an additional pawn, but what else? One other feature. Better pawn structure. Yeah, you'll need to elaborate on that if you can. Yeah, well done, Michelle. Can make a passed pawn. Yeah, so potential to make a passed pawn here. And then obviously we all know that in the end game, if you get a passed pawn, then it's very difficult to survive. Black's only chance would be to get some kind of perpetual check, but that's not so common at this level. So Queen C5 was played, Queen A5. I mean, the Queen's got to get active. And it didn't take very much time for Magnus to convert. Black's obviously got some tiny hope of trying to get a perpetual check on C1 and F4, but White stopped that. Magnus isn't going to allow that, is he? And there we go. It's game over. Now in this position here, White played pawn takes G4. What happens if Queen takes G4? Let me know in the chat, please. Yeah, not just one move, just try and tell me a bit more if you can. That would be a terrible blunder. Because it's just a draw now. Queen E1. And it's a perpetual check. And there's absolutely no way that White can escape. So Magnus isn't going to make a blunder like that, but Jan is still trying. And that's what good players do. They keep fighting right to the end. They don't give up. Obviously, in his head, psychologically, he's really damaged because he's blundered a whole pawn in this game. But he's got to keep going and keep trying to set traps. Okay, so I thought that was quite an interesting game. And I thought it'd be good to show you a decisive game. On the theme of decisive games, let's then go to the next game. I'm not going to focus too much on the beginning of this game. We'll just look at what happened. I mean, you can tell me in the chat what did happen in this game. Let's see who's been following. This is game number 9. And yes, something rather spectacular happened in this game. Okay, let's I'm not going to give anything away, although I'm sure you've probably heard about it if you've been following the match. So things just went from bad to worse. So remember that game 6, which was the longest ever World Championship game, Jan lost, and then there was a draw, and then he's just blundered a pawn and lost the game really badly. And then in this game, let's see what happened. I think Michelle knows. Okay, so Jan had come back from the rest day. He had a fresh new haircut. He didn't have that long ponytail at the back. He cut that off during the rest day. He was all fresh and ready to win. He started with an English. His prep seemed to be going really very well. Yeah, psychologically, I think he was trying to recover from his bad blunder. And like I said, I'm not going to focus too much on the opening. We've not got too much time. I just want to get to what happened in this game and why it could possibly have happened. So let's get through the game. Black hasn't really developed yet. Carlsen's been taking lots of time. Jan's been rushing his moves because he's already probably prepared them at home. Free. Remember how I always go on about hanging pieces? well, this knight is a hanging piece, it's not defended. So Carlsen took the opportunity to move it backwards, and I think that's important. That's why tactics don't usually happen in high-level games, or basic tactics don't happen, because players don't leave pieces on squares where they're vulnerable to tactics. So at this point, I think the position is pretty equal, and Jan was feeling quite confident. I think he was taking his time. So he wasn't taking his time, because I think he had an advantage on the clock. So he was thinking, well, if I play fast, I can try and do something against Magnus because he's shorter on time. So Jan was playing very fast and confidently as well. Oh yeah, this was a position in the press conference. Magnus said he actually missed Queen E1. He'd completely missed it. And after Queen E1, Magnus loses a pawn. However, it's not that bad because he gets lots and lots of compensation for it. But Magnus was happy to admit that he hadn't seen Queen E1. So now he had to take, rook takes, and then play H5. So that the knight has got a retreat square, because F3 was threatened. So now Jan wins a pawn. And at this point, Jan's probably getting quite excited. I mean, I think the engine evaluation here is equal. So Jan's not winning or better, but he was ahead on the clock. He's just got a pawn, and he was feeling pretty good. So in this position here, we're on move 27. 26. Rook A4 has just been played, and Jan fairly instantly plays C5. So let's turn the board around. You're Magnus Carlsen. What do you play? Yeah, hopefully you all recognize the position now. I mean, we were watching Magnus on the video, and he was just pulling all these faces because he just couldn't believe it. After C6, that's it. It's game over. That bishop is officially trapped. I mean, this is a world-class player just blundering a piece. A very basic blunder as well. I'm sure we've all been taught how to trap a bishop. So in this position, well, Jan has gone to the rest room. They all get their own, there's only two of them. They get their own room with a screen, and he obviously was in there sulking. So he was in there for a long time before he came out and emerged. But what he did say in the press conference is he always thought his bishop wasn't going to get trapped because his knight could always come to C5. But obviously when you've just got a pawn there, that's not going to happen. So the only reason I wanted to highlight this is all players can make mistakes, and psychology can have a massive impact on your chess. I don't know if you've played a tournament where you've been the favourite to win, or you've been really desperate to win, and because of that you've made really bad mistakes because you couldn't quite cope with the pressure. Psychology is very important in chess, and you've got to make sure that you're ready for it. It's pretty impossible to ever be ready for a world championship match in terms of the pressure. However, once he'd comfortably got a few draws, you'd have thought he would have been able to relax a bit. And now, I mean, it's pretty certain that Magnus is going to win. It would be nice if he could get a win, if Jan could win a game, but at this point, it's going to be very, very tough to get a point. And Charlie's saying Magnus not made a mistake in the tournament so far. Oh yeah, he has. He was really badly losing one of the earlier games. Yeah, no, I don't think we should be harsh on Nepo. He's a really nice person as well. Like in the post-match interviews, he's been, very, very polite, and it can't be fun for him or interesting for him. Whereas when Magnus lost a game against Karyakin, he didn't even go to the press conference. So anyway, I think it's important to think about psychology when you're playing big tournaments as well. If you're playing a game as well and your opponent makes a mistake that you wouldn't think they'd normally play, then, trust yourself. If you think you can play c6 and win that bishop, play it. And just because they're a really strong player, don't agree a draw. Play to win. Because everyone makes mistakes. And this is quite an interesting mistake to make because, like I said to you, he thought his knight could go there. He just forgot that he put a pawn in the way. These are the two matches that he lost. But since then, he's drawn a game and he'll be coming back tomorrow with the white pieces. And so it'll be interesting to see how he can do there. Just looking at the chat. Yeah, Emma, the journalists are always really quite nasty with the questions. But like I say, Jan's dealt with them very, very well. When you play your games, if you make a mistake, be sure that you go back and look at them. Work out what's gone wrong. Don't just think, oh, it won't happen again and forget about it. You really should address what's gone wrong because then you're always improving and getting better. He's lost 3, Kushal, that's true. Didn't look at the first game that he lost because that was a really good game. It was absolutely epic. It went on and on and on. I think it was game 6, wasn't it? It was the longest ever World Championship game, 136 moves, and it was over 8 hours. So I thought we're not going to have time to look at that in an hour or a 45-minute session. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed looking at some highlights so far of the match. There's still some games left, and I'm hoping that we'll have some really interesting chess, and I'm really pleased to see that you're following it. And sorry, I was looking at the chat. Lasted over 2 days. What lasted over 2 days, Charlie? So, like I say, let's. It'd be really nice if Jan could win a game, and it'd be really interesting to see if he can. So, it's hard to recover, but he might be able to do it. I don't think he'll be able to win the match, but he might be able to get a win in the next couple of games.